Welcome to the Winning Playbook. I'm your host, Coach Tony Daniels. Today we have a special guest with us in our video podcast, Ahman Green, joining us. Thanks for jumping on the podcast with us today, Ahman.
Hey, no problem, Coach. How you doing?
I'm doing really good. So I got to go ahead and say, Ahman and I, we were able to connect through the Native American Athletic Foundation, where we coached together in the Native All-American game, which was up in Minnesota in Viking Stadium, U.S. Bank Stadium. So that was a really cool experience. The foundation, the coaches, just everything from top down was just really top notch. So I'm glad that we were able to connect through that, and now also doing this podcast. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Just meeting you, Mason Fine. Working
Yes.
with you both was fun, was educational, and just something to where I was like just knowing how to be a player. How I was know how to mix in with new teammates and stuff like that. So I just took that relation over to like team up with you guys, having worked with you guys. But then the one language we did have was football. So we understood that,
Absolutely.
defense from your side, and then with Mason, the offensive side of what he was looking at, and what he saw, and vice versa, what you saw too, in certain, between the meetings, setting that up for the kids, and then obviously on the field stuff once we got to the game.
Great, great foundation. Everything was just top notch. So,
Mm-hmm.
again, appreciate you being able to do this. Ahman Green played football with the Nebraska Cornhuskers. 12-year NFL veteran, was a four-time Pro Bowler who played with the Seahawks, the Packers, and also the Texans, and also the leading all-time rusher for the Packers. Ahman, can you go ahead and just kind of explain what you're up to now? I know some of the esports and stuff that we talked about, but just wanted to kind of get that out there with everything that you're doing currently.
Yeah, so I say in the last 5 years, I've been in the esports world development of just like what I was doing with high school coaching, football, baseball, softball, functional training, and powerlifting to get ready for your sports. So in esports, doing the same thing, developing talent, developing teams. So I started the esports team at Lakeland University as a D3 school in Plymouth, Wisconsin, just halfway between Green Bay and Milwaukee area. And so
Nice.
I got hired there in COVID year, and at the start of COVID year 2020, January. And I think I started, my official was February 17th, a day after my birthday. So press conference, but then got into stuff that we do in football, right? Is recruiting. So I
Right.
did that right away. Started reaching out to kids that were interested in the program, and obviously meeting the on campus kids, because it was a student run club at first, but then they wanted to go and get a coach. And so that means get brought up to the varsity level of the athletic department at Lakeland. So that means they needed to bring a faculty member in, and so a friend of mine was on the board at Lakeland and threw my name in the hat, and I was like, yeah, do that, because that's
Absolutely.
part of what I'm doing now, and something I want to do. And then so first year, got there, recruited probably like 4 or 5 kids onto the roster. End up winning with some of the kids that were already on campus. Total, I think we had about 20, maybe. No, actually, we went from 20 esports players to then like double that, 40, 41, because of COVID,
Wow.
no traditional sports, right? So I
Hmm.
had the football players playing Madden, a few soccer guys and ladies playing Fortnite to NBA 2K, and then Call of Duty, and other fighter games, and other FPS games of that nature. So we end up year one winning the national title in Madden, and then a lot of playoff bursts from all the other titles. And I just brought over, what I learned in football, training together, working on
Yeah.
mechanics, and that's how I developed those teams. And they had their, input as team captains, were my assistant coaches, to make sure, that if something I missed in the game that I don't know very well, they would help me out and follow up. And so I started doing that in 2020, and then around the end of 2022, I got an offer at Nebraska and went over there to start their help their program get going.
Okay.
Same situation. Have a faculty member to guide them into the right direction, because a part of that, I know Nebraska needed some funding there. So we started fundraising. I think in year 1 to 2, I raised around 12,000. So get some little stuff that we needed, from travel to tournaments and stuff like that. where we needed that money for that because a lot of programs needed that in the beginning of first year. And that's kind of something with Lakeland. I think I raised around 5 or 6 grand in year one there for some of the travel and some of the equipment that we had. But a lot of that equipment, thank God, was handled by the faculty and the staff of the athletic department to have money put aside because they were planning it about a year before they brought me in at Lakeland. So that was I started and got that going. And then right before I left Lakeland, I started teaching a class called Intro to Esports, which is similar to sports management, something that we know very well, where you got coach development, player development, business development, but all from a video game esports standpoint. So if you're somebody that wants to go into game development where you want to build out a game or, competitive gaming on any platform, computer or console, but teaching those players how to be better Call of Duty players, Madden players, stuff like that. So how you develop that out. And it's no different than what we do. When we develop a quarterback, a linebacker, defensive line, you show them the basics. You start with that and go from there. And then they'll master them and then take them to the next step when you see that they can do so much, at that first level to level 2 and then 3, then 4. So started doing that. But before that, I was already streaming on my own on Twitch, Ahman Green TV, and doing the podcast. Ahman Green's Gamers Lounge came about 2-3 years later. The idea was there year one of that, of basically having a show where I talk about another passion of mine, which is playing video games. And so I already done football podcast, Believe in Packers with one of my old teammates, Mike Wall. And then I started, it's like I wanted to get this gaming one going because I could see that it wasn't a lot in the space. There was a few that done like updates on games coming out and what's the word, what's the headline in the gaming industry and stuff like that. And so I was like, I didn't see that. That was something that you see with our sport, right? With football, there's 1,000 podcasts, there's 1,000 talk shows on ABC, all the big networks. So I was like, you know what? I don't see this for video games here. Let me pitch that out there, and I did. I just started the show, running it. Now we're almost 3. We had 284 episodes in. We did our 284th episode yesterday, and so it went well.
Congratulations!
Yeah, thank you. Pushing along, over the last 10 years of my channel, but probably 5-6 years of that podcast. So doing that. And then also doing camps. So with that, information and experience that I got from coaching and building programs, I took it just to virtual esports camps to where either I could be at home or I could, fly in. You could fly me into high school or a program like the Boys and Girls Club, like I did in Kansas last year at Prairie Band with a good friend of mine, Cody Wilson, who introduced me to Joanna, who is in charge.
Cody, yeah.
Yep. She's the director and manager of the boys club there on the reservation in Kansas. And so got connected with her, and we was in really quick to put the plan together, but got a 3-4 day esports camp set up there for that last year, and then this upcoming this year already. And then back in my hometown, Omaha, Nebraska, was able to get one there with Quest Forward High School, which is a smaller school, but they have an esports team, all the same. And so that's kind of what I've been doing. And then basically consulting on business with esports or with player development, and even doing my old thing, as training kids and making sure they got the basics of physical functional training in terms of getting their bodies ready for whatever sport they're playing. And so I'm doing a little bit of everything, which I don't mind doing. I was a busy kid, so I'm a busy adult right now. Doing the stuff I love to do is teaching young people, about from competition to accountability to functional training, nutrition, all that. So I'm kind of I say sitting in my wheelhouse right now. So that's kind of where I've been. But also, I say play-by-play for some of the stuff I do. I've done commentation for ESPN, for CBS over the last few years. Setting the box I know this past year was for Berkeley versus Texas State, I believe, in California for that game. Was the play-by-play of that. So still, hitting marks on, being on a professional level. So I got that also in my back pocket where I'm just not saying, oh yeah, I just covered a Madden competition or a Madden tournament or a Halo or Call of Duty tournament, but I've done professional ESPN work and national TV work out as well. So I get more, credibility behind, just like if I
Sure.
was going to coach a football team and say, hey, I played in the NFL for 12 years, so I believe there's some credibility behind that to say I'm gonna come on the staff and be the running backs coach or be a recruiter or be player development. I could definitely help off with that because I went through that as an athlete, and now
Hmm.
I understand the back end on what I need to do to help players develop or help players to get recruited into a program. So that's
So what's pretty crazy about everything is you also are into like just your fundamentals.
hmm
Everything breaks back to where we've been with coaching football, with just developing players and doing that whole aspect of everything. How does, just talking about your fundamentals, when you talk about esports, man, you got to have fundamentals for that because I used to be an avid Madden player. NCAA, that just came out again this season or this year. You got to have fundamentals. You got to know there's a lot of things on those trigger buttons
yep.
that you got to be able to know, and you got to be able to do it quickly. So there's a lot of the same, I guess, if you will, of just fundamentals with esports and also with esports and also with playing football or anything that you do as a coach. It all kind of boils back down to your fundamentals.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I started with at Lakeland and in Nebraska, and even with the camps. I say we just pick a game and go with it. And so if it's Call of Duty or if it's Madden, just say, hey, let's start with the basics. Just find out what buttons do what. Um, you do that first. The A button does this. The B button does that. X, Y does this. The RB, the left and right trigger. Make sure you understand all those processes, and obviously mess around with the controller where you kind of just run around and play to get used to it, and then you get into the hard task of, okay, when we find out what players are better reacting to using certain, if it's a FPS, certain weapons, they
Yep.
do a good job at programming the game to understand the kickback of a gun. So you got to learn the spray pattern. But then a lot of the game modes, you got multiplayer, you got what they call domination or control, where you're trying to hold an area and protect it. You gotta not just hold the area, but you gotta build a perimeter because players will be coming from your flank, from behind you to try to take over the space. And so you gotta learn how to set up a perimeter, protect the player or players that are in the space, gaining the time to try to win. So that means everybody has a
Yeah.
role, and somebody might have a role that be on the left side of the map and another one on the right side of the map. Another one is the sniper. So they're making sure they're keeping everybody safe. So it sounds no different than getting the offensive line, I say, brought up to speed of knowing that they got defensive line that they're a 3-3 or a 3-4, and they like to do a lot of mugging with the backers and preparing that offensive line for that. So it's really, like I said, it sounds different. Basically, it sounds a little different, but then all the same, because
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
had those conversations where I'm like, man, this feels like I'm in the lineman room with the lineman back in Green Bay, breaking down the film to make sure, when we play against the Bears and we got Brian Urlacher and Lance Briggs, to make sure, we keep them running off the top, running a counter or a power to make sure, when we see
Yeah.
that when that helmet hits this, looks like it's going to the sideline, that means we're going to cut it up. So same thing. Um, Help them find the telltale signs of that. And a lot of players, the captains of my teams, they understood that, so they would like translate something that maybe other players didn't understand, and so they would get it. Then once one player said, they'd be like, "Oh, okay." I said, "You want us to, kind of bottleneck this area?" Yeah, because then it'd be a easy, as we call it in FPS, kill zone. So you keep players from out of the space. But this starting with the fundamentals, I think helps them understand that I'm not just trying to come in and do something that I don't understand. I understand the fundamentals, because if you don't know the fundamentals, you're not going to get to that one level. Like you said, you want to get to that really good level of playing whatever you're doing.
I'm on with this being the winning playbook where we talk about recruiting insight, fundamentals, and all the above. I wanted to be able to create this podcast to be able to bring on former players, former NFL players, anybody that is a former coach, any of my former alumni guys that I've coached at several different places. Savion Morrison, a former running back that was at Nebraska, bringing on these guys to be able to talk about just the whole recruiting aspect, talk about NIL and all that. And
Yeah.
also to be able to talk about the journey. And maybe any advice that you would like to share. So, what I would like to go ahead and do is let's go ahead and start off with your recruiting journey. The first question that I have for you, take us back to that moment of your recruiting process coming out of high school.
Man, I'll say it started with, man, I could go back to my sophomore year. So I got my first recruiting letter from North Carolina for track. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. And opened the letter and it said, hello, Ahman Green. This was, I'm the coach. I can't remember the coach's name from North Carolina, but it was a coach from North Carolina, head coach of the track team. We watch you. I mean, I was a sophomore at this time, so this was early, I
Early in the
believe,
process.
early in the process. So that was like I know I kept that letter for a little while. I might still have it. It might be somewhere that my mom gave me back later because she would like to collect all my clippings or anything like interesting like that, like her
Yes.
son's first
Yeah.
recruiting letter, right, from a coach. And I remember it talked about, we watched you or we heard about you, something like that. So that means they were in town or they had somebody had eyes on me, at some of my track meets my sophomore year. So that was the first introduction to that. And then when I transferred schools. I was at Omaha North at that time, sophomore year. But
Okay.
then I transferred that summer to Omaha Central. And I did that because my mom was like, she saw my practice SAT scores, and she's like, "Nope, you're going to my high school. Their curriculum is way better, way better and way tougher." Which she was right. I got there, so I was a 4.0 at North my sophomore year. Transferred
Okay.
that year, that summer of 1993, over to North or over to Central, and 1992, and started classes first semester. My GPA went from a 4.0 down to a 3.2 because it was like, ooh, it was a struggle, but just like anything, it's like, all right, I got first semester down, I got beat up, I got fire hose, here we go. And second semester bumped up back up to a 3.7. So
Nice.
I was able to catch up, and my mom was happy now, and so that's when the recruiting letter started. My junior year, transferred to Central. Football team was a little bit better than I was as a sophomore, even though I did rush for 1,000 yards. But our record was 4-5 at North. My junior year at Central, we went 6-3, and myself and another running back, Damian Morrow, were actually find out later we were cousins in the same backfield. He rushed for 1,000, like 1,200. I was for 1,300 back to back, in the same backfield.
Dynamic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we had an outstanding offensive line. One of the offensive linemen was a guard. He was Gail Sayers' nephew, Kevin
Mm.
Sayers. We had a kid by the name of Randy Siddick. He was six. What was Randy? Randy was 6'3", 315. Offensive lineman in high school.
Big boy.
Big boy. It can move. And we had another kid
Yes.
named Kevin Armstrong. We call him Strong Arm. And he was about 6'1" or 6'2", and he was like 280, and he could run. So we did a lot of power, a lot of counter. This is Nebraska, so this was 90s Nebraska football at the high school level. Every high school ran it in Nebraska. So after that first season, me clocking, like I said, 1,300 yards rushing, that's when the letters start coming in. Georgia, Alabama, Nebraska, Mississippi, Ole Miss, Ohio State, Wisconsin, USC, UCLA, literally everybody. And and once I got introduced to that North Carolina letter for track, and then by that year's time, me and my dad was always every now and then he'll sit me down and have a conversation and say, "Hey, this is about to happen. You're gonna start getting, look at this year. You had 1,000 yards. Your grades are almost perfect. So you're gonna have schools reaching out to you, and so they're gonna. And now your senior year comes around, then I start visits, and so what he said, and talking to my brothers too, was like, all right, these visits is you kicking the car, like you about to buy a new car, because I've been through a parking lot with my dad. He was an auctioneer, and I remember buying my new first car, and he's like, I want you to get under the hood, look at the alternator, look at the battery, see if you see corrosion around it. So it's like when you looked at that car, now you're going to go look at that school like that. You're going to go kick the
Yes.
tires. You're going to go talk to the coaches.
In depth.
You're going to get serious. And so I'm an 11th grader, and I'm locked in. Like I'm 11, 16, 17 years old. So when I remember I set up my visits, I took my notebook and draw some lines with my ruler and pencil and made a chart. The chart had the schools I was going to visit, the offensive scheme, the defensive scheme, the city, the major. If they had my major at that time was computer science,
Yep.
and those are like the 4 or 5 categories. And I put a check mark for everyone. I put an X if they didn't have it, whatever. If they were more of a passing offense than a run first offense. I played linebacker, so if they had a 3-4 defense, a four, back then 3-4 wasn't a bit popular, so more three. It
Yeah.
was more 4-4 and 4-3 at that time. Was 3-4 wasn't very popular. 3-3 wasn't popular then either. But I would make sure to have it on the chart so I knew what I was going into. And so my first visit setup was Nebraska, Notre Dame, Michigan, Penn State, and Arizona. If you remember Arizona back in 1993, 94, they had a number one ranked defense next to the
Yeah.
black next to Nebraska, the black shirts. So they were ranked 2 behind the black shirts. And so they had a guy by the name of Teddy Bruschi, a couple other guys. Spurlock was a strong safety. So the
Had
fun
some dudes.
they had some dudes.
Yeah.
They had some
Yeah.
dudes. Charlie Camp was all Pac-12 or Pac-10 at that time, linebacker
Wow.
for them, and he was my host when I went down there, and that was my first visit. So I'll take you in my visits and just meeting those guys, meeting Charlie, meeting Teddy Bruschi, and just knowing that they even pitched at me. They're pitching stuff like you could play baseball. We'll let you play linebacker if you want to go both ways. I'm like, so my eyes are like, I'm hearing everything I want to see. All the bells are ringing because I'm like, yes, I want to play linebacker. I want to go. I want to be Bo Jackson, right? I want to be
Right.
the
Right.
football player slash baseball player slash Deion Sanders. You know what? I'm gonna play both sides of the ball. Let's do this. So I'm all in. Great visit there. Then I take my visit to, I think it's Notre Dame after that. That one was a little wonky. I tell the story. It's a long story, but long story short of it, I'll just say it was a big recruiting weekend. It had me, Charles Woodson, Randy Moss, Kevin Falk, and I think Jimmy Friday, if you remember that name.
I do. Yeah. Kind
Dalen,
of the who's. Yeah. Who's of who? I mean,
yeah,
those are some big time names right there.
yeah, Dalen McCutcheon. We had some, and so we're there in South Bend, and so a lot of guys like I'm gonna go visit. I'm gonna kick the tires just like my dad said. Then when I come home, I'm gonna think about it. Some of
Yeah.
the guys on this trip was all right. Oh man, I'm coming to Notre Dame. I'm like, no, I'm not. I wanna take my visit. I wanna take
Yep.
every visit before I pick. And so I did that. And they're like, no, I'm not come here. I remember Randy was like, dude, I'm coming here. And I was like, happy for you, Randy. But I got a couple more visits. I got Nebraska. At that time, I had Nebraska left. I had Michigan left. And so, long story short, with that Notre Dame trip, I was like, it wasn't, didn't love it,
Yeah.
didn't hate
Yeah.
it, but didn't love it, it's still Notre Dame, right? And so
Yeah.
finally I go to Nebraska, and Nebraska was, it was what I thought it would be. Those guys were real welcoming. The players were honest. So between Nebraska, I remember Lawrence Phillips, Tommy Frazier, Mike Minter, was my host. Actually, he was a strong side safety slash linebacker from Oklahoma, but he just
Yeah.
said, "Hey,
Yeah.
Ahman, even though I play defense, I tell you, if you being a running back, if you just come in and you learn the plays, you don't make a lot of mistakes, you'll get on the field. Coach Osborne has no problem playing underclassmen, so that rung a bell. It's like I could play my freshman year. I don't have to wait. And Michigan, I had to wait. Biaka Batuka was my host, and he told me straight up, "Hey, they don't play underclassmen here. Like you got to be a junior or senior to start." And I'm like, "Thank you, appreciate you." I said right there to him, "I'm not coming here," because I was like, I know I could play day one.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
said, it's a running offense. Running game did not change a whole lot. And even today, I've been in locker rooms today. It's only power, ISO, outside zone, power toss. He's still running that in the RPO today. So wasn't much going to change over for me from high school to college. So that right there told me a whole lot.
Right.
And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm not coming to Michigan because I want to play day one. And I wasn't a kid that even when I was little, in Little League, I had switched a few programs, and I grew up in Los Angeles, and I went to one fun program, to another and end up starting, the first year there because I was either the better one or I knew the plays better, something like that. So I never was a part of that age thing, not being a senior and not, that stuff was, I say something that my dad said, it's there. Like you might not play because somebody knows somebody else, right? The coach might be his son playing. So you got to be ready for that. He prepared me for that. My brothers, prepared me for that because there is favoritism. When you get in some of these football athletic programs, no matter where it is, high school, little league, college, pro, you could come across that. That can kind of mess you up a little bit. But if you're not ready for it, it'll really throw you off. But if you were ready for it,
Yeah.
you just take it as a learning lesson. And that's what I learned, growing up in sports. I played everything: football, baseball, basketball, ran track. Like
Everything.
you're gonna have coaches that, that's his nephew, he's gonna start over you even though you're better. Something like that.
Right.
So that's what I had in the back of my mind. But I was like, well, if I can avoid it, which I did, I just like, you know what, I'm not coming to Michigan. And it boiled
Yeah.
down. Yeah, it boiled down to out of all those schools. It boiled down to so real quick too. Penn State, they wanted me to verbally commit. So you talk about NIL and transfer portal. They wanted me to verbally commit before I kicked the tires, before I got on the plane to go to Happy Hollow. And I'm pretty sure I could see your wheels turning already. Like, what?
What? Yeah.
I'm a top 5 running back. So just imagine today, they took a top 5 running back and said to them, I want you to commit before you come here. And this is with NIL and transfer portal. You think that top 5 running back going to go to Penn State and visit? Probably not. Because, and my dad said, hey, no. He said, nope, don't do that. Because I said, Dad, Penn State said they want me to commit verbally before I come there and take a look at campus. He's like, nope, don't do that. He's like, don't go. I said, why? He said, well, you'll be the bad guy if you change your mind. The fans will then jump down your neck. You'll be on ESPN or whatever. Wasn't many outlets covering recruiting like high school recruiting now, but
Right.
with the little bit that was, they'll be like, oh, Ahman Green flipped to Nebraska or Notre Dame, Michigan, whomever, where he already verbally committed to Joe Paterno and their coaching staff, and that's
Yeah.
you're just
Times have changed.
yeah, times have changed. You're a young
It's
man
crazy.
in the 90s where that will carry weight because you got Joe Paterno, you just turned him down. And I'm just a famous kid from Omaha. Just a little
Right.
kid from Omaha, not from the whole world and country knowing about that staff. So I was like, all right. So I called Penn State and said, no, I'm gonna decline that visit. And so it took my 4 visits and boiled it down to Nebraska and Arizona. And then it came down to just being close to family is what kept me in the state.
Gotcha.
The teams to me were, built the same. They had a good defense. Maybe offense wasn't as powerful on Arizona side as Nebraska once I found out and got plugged into that offense once I got there as a freshman. But that was my process. Was like, man, it was all these different things. Like learning that Michigan would not play freshmen. It was like the biggest thing once I got back home, I told my brothers, I told guys at the school, like, man, Michigan,
Everybody.
they don't play sophomore and freshman, even if you're better than the senior. And they were like, what? I was like, yeah, that's crazy, right? Like, I'm
Yeah.
a competitor, but I'm okay with sitting the bench. If somebody beat me out, then they beat me out. But you're telling me I can't even compete because I'm a junior? I mean, I'm a sophomore, I'm a true freshman? Like, man. And so
Yeah,
I'm
that's
like,
crazy.
yeah, so that was my journey. Yeah.
Man, and I tell you what, I want to go back because a lot of student athletes that I talk to now, whenever I talk to them, about looking at schools, I love the analogy that you talked about going through, like as you said, as your dad, what he did, going into the car auctioneers and being able to use that as an analogy there because there's so many different things that you need to look at and not chase logos.
Yes.
There's way too many things that are going on nowadays where it's just logo chasing instead of the right fit for you.
Right.
So when you talked about coming up with that sheet of paper and writing down, your X's or your check marks, and yes, they did have it. No, they didn't. I like that. Just to be able to take that another step further, to be able to talk to kids. So then that way after, because here's the deal, you're going to go, your 5 visits and they're all going to be different.
Yep.
And then you're going to have to go back and be like, well, what did I like about this place or what did I not like about it? But you have
Exactly.
your notes and you have other people that are able to help guide you. So I'm glad you brought that up. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you doing that.
Yep.
In choosing Nebraska, Amon, how important were the relationships with the coaches in your decision?
It was probably about 90, 85% of my decision. Like when I took my visit there, I had been talking to Coach Osborne quite a bit. Coach Solis was a running backs coach, and even Craig Bowl and Larry, not Larry, Charlie McBride was the defensive coordinator,
Okay.
which I
Yeah.
know you know very well. Fantastic defensive coordinator, you know. And he wanted me at linebacker. Him and Kevin, it was between him, Craig Bowl, and Kevin Steele. They wanted me at linebacker, and then Coach Solich and Coach Osborne wanted me at running back. 'Cause
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
knew like you had a. If they put me at linebacker, it probably would have been strong safety because I was running a 4.3 coming out of high school, 4.2. And so ain't no way I was gonna be in the 5 yards from the backfield. They would have put me up at about 15 yards back there and then get a running start
Yes.
and
Yeah.
go come downfield into the box. So getting to know them and them really just being honest, right? They were, hey,
Right.
what the player had mentioned to me, like Mike Mentor, Lawrence Phillips had said to me the same thing, almost verbatim. Hey man, you even though I'm the starter, but they'll play the best person. As long as you know your plays, you don't make a lot of MAs, mistakes on that field, they'll put you out there.
Yeah.
Coach Osborne
Yeah.
doesn't look at, you know, junior, senior. He looks at what's the best player right now in our locker room at that position. We want to put, and that's all I needed to hear. And then on top of that, that's what he said to my parents in our living room in Omaha, Nebraska, when he came to our house and mentioned that. My
Yeah.
mom, I mean, right away after he was done talking, my mom said, "You going to Nebraska?" I was like, "Mom, I got a couple more visits. I gotta look at first." She's like, "No,
Yes.
you going to Lincoln? You going to
You're
Nebraska?"
going.
But she was right. That's what happened at the end. Um, and then it was the same thing with Arizona. They were honest. Say, "Hey, you could come play, football here and baseball if you want. Middle linebacker too if you want." So it
Yeah.
just boiled down to that. And I say, as a recruiter, I mean, you recruiting at your level, at the college level now, just be honest with the athlete. That's the biggest take home for a recruiter, for the adult in the room, conversation wise. Because as a player, when I got to Nebraska, and we're recruiters too, because then the new freshman class of next year is coming in. And I remember recruiting Jamal Lewis, Joe Walker, a kid that I got to be my backup. Darn it, I can't think of his name right now, but he was a running back out of the South. And I remember talking to those guys, and I told the same thing that Lawrence and Mike Minter said to me. I said, "Hey man, you come here, you don't make mistakes, you learn the playbook. Shoot, you could beat me out." Jamal was like, "Nah, I'm good." He said, "I'm not coming here." He was like, "Yo, you too good of mine." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "This is Jamal Lewis telling me
Yeah.
this." As a freshman or senior in high school, but I'm like, hey, I mean, well, and I would throw on top. The cherry was, hey, you got a chance to win a national title, and he would have had that. Well, he did have that opportunity being at Tennessee though, but telling them, just being honest with the guys. Like, look, Joe
Yeah.
Walker,
Yeah.
he was a highly recruited DB out of Dallas area, and I said to him as a defensive back, I said, look, we got dudes like this defense is coached by Charlie McBride. Most of his guys, what I noticed in the last few years, no lower than a early third round pick. I'm like, so obviously, if one of our aspirations is to go to the NFL,
Hmm.
that's going to be covered because you're going to be coached hard. He's going to bring the best out of you. You won't think he doesn't like you, but he loves you and he's making you better defensively. You're going to be a defensive player, and so if you
Yeah.
just come in and do that, learn that aspect of coaching, you're gonna be good to go. And then Coach Osborne is Coach Osborne, man. He never cussed. To have a coach that never cussed at me for 3.5 years, tell me any other coach that could coach at that level and not do that. And so that gained a lot of
Right.
respect for
Right.
me. And to tell that to my guys, the kids I was recruiting, Correll Buckhalter was the running back. That's who it was.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
got him to come to Nebraska because I would
Yeah.
tell them the truth. Like, hey man, come here, work hard, get in your playbook, get in the weight room, get beefy, get stronger, get faster, and don't make mistakes. You'll be on that football
Yeah.
field.
Yeah. So lessons that you learned as a recruit, I get a lot of questions that people ask me.
Hmm.
What advice would you give athletes who feel like they're overlooked or maybe under recruited?
Oh man, just do your job. And so when I say do your job, I mean be in shape. I say number one, take that back. Since you're in college and high school, going to high school, or high school going to college, have your
Yep.
grades right first. I don't care NIL transfer portal going on. They look at the grades first still today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have A's and B's. If you can have all A's, great. If you can have A's and B's, you're doing good. Stay in that area. And then make sure you're in shape. Make sure you play multiple sports so you'll flush out the best ability that you will have in football if that's your lane. But if you're
Right.
baseball, same thing. If you're a baseball player, play football, run track. If you're a basketball player, run track, play football, play rugby, play something similar like lacrosse to counter the muscles because your body can break down. If we're going to get into technicalities, because I know this because I'm a coach of functional training, if you overplay a muscle and overplay a sport, that means 12 months a year, if you're playing football, those muscles will start deteriorating, breaking down, and losing the the strength, the
Right. Right.
reflexes, because you're always pounding, you're hitting your shoulders will start to break down, your ankles, your knees will start to because you're moving. It's the repetitive movements you're constantly doing. So go from football to wrestling to baseball to track. That's great. That's going to make you a better athlete in the long run. So in high school to
Yeah.
little league to high school, play multiple sports. That's what I did. I played volleyball. I would go swimming just being a kid. I played baseball. I played in the outfield.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
I played
Yeah.
basketball. I was a point guard that could jump. So I got to use different modalities, different muscles throughout the 12 calendar month year. So my body was never just wore out. And
Yeah.
if you do get wore out, hopefully you got a parent like mine that let me take a whole year off when I was 13. From age 12 to 13, I came to my dad and I said, Dad, I'm tired. And he's like, What you mean? I was like, I've been playing, since I was 6 every year. It's been the same thing, which I mean, I love it, but my body, sometimes I feel tired when I'm growing up, last couple of years. He said, All right,
Yeah.
cool. And of course, it was a funny to watch him tell the teams that I played for, Ahman's not playing this year. They were like, huh? What's going on?
What?
So be mindful of yourself of that too, because you got to think about that. As you get older, you get into the high school and get in recruiting. Same thing. If you want to play another sport, let them know. Let the school know. That's part of it. Now they could put that. They could negotiate that, right? That's
Right. Right.
be conscious of what you can and what you control and where your power's at. I think kids today got a lot more power than we did 30 years ago. I love it, but just learn how to manage it because we obviously seen some of the bad cases of that with Nico, the quarterback from Tennessee to UCLA this past year.
Yeah.
Him and his
Yeah.
dad thought they had something going. You know what? We're going to make another deal on top of what he already got. Didn't work out. Now that put him kind of in a flux situation. He's at a school now. He's at UCLA, a good school, but they're transitioning new coaches and all that. So just be careful and learn from his experience. Use that experience
Absolutely.
and learn from his experience from the dad to him making a decision, but also why and when and where. Make sure you have all the information because I tell kids today, and I told kids
Need it.
there, with you at Minnesota, that this is NIL transfer portal is all NFL stuff. That's free agency. You're negotiating your NIL money. That's a contract. So
Yep.
just be mindful and learn, and make sure your parents are in at the high school level because then they'll help him for the next level.
So, with all that being said, any mistakes or what mistakes do you see maybe young athletes that they're making right now that maybe that you see
Oh yeah.
and maybe something that maybe you made yourself? What would be something that you could kind of see some of these other athletes that you see that are making a little bit of mistakes that maybe they just don't know?
Yeah, I would say the mistake of don't be too quick to jump in the portal. Right? Wait. Like if you go to
Right.
one school and you're second string, third string, you're not, even though you're practicing, you're not in a game yet. Hey,
Yeah.
grow there. Grow. I remember Coach Osborne said something about me because when I got done playing ball, and one day I was getting into high school coaching, and I called him up just for some advice, and he said, "Nigga, Ahman, grow where you." He said, "What did he say? It was either bloom where you growing or grow where and bloom where you're at." So that means,
Gotcha.
like a
Yeah.
plant,
Yeah.
like a flower. When the flower blooms, it sends out stuff to grow other plants. So that means you're making
Mhm.
connections. I took that as that's how I understood that. And then you grow your network of people, coaches, players in your area.
Networking is huge.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Stay,
Yes.
be in your area and master, get that lay of the land around where you're at. And so I took that as that. And I made sure to do that, even though I've been in different places now. I'm in Texas now. I'm doing that now. I'm growing and blooming in Houston, Texas now. I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
connecting to people from all sorts of life, professions down here, like I did in Wisconsin. And then like I started to do in Nebraska before I had to leave and come and just kind of start what I'm doing now. So do
Yeah.
that. So think about that in terms of your depth chart, right? You're at Tennessee, you're at Notre Dame, you're at Nebraska, you're third on the depth chart. Don't be quick in there. Like before you want to jump, try to be there at least 2 years, because then you're learning a new offense or learning a new defense. You're learning special teams from another coaching staff. Then you decide to go in the portal after year two. You're more mature, and then boom, you go to another school, and now you can bring all that good experience to then better yourself. Get
Absolutely.
the new information from a
Yes.
new coach, a new staff of special teams, offense, defense. That you got a linebacker coach. Say if you're a linebacker, that you learn a 4-4 there. Now you're going to learn 4-3. You're going to learn how to drop into hard flat, a little bit different than what you did in that 4-4 defense. So now you
Yep.
got two
Yep.
languages that now you speak. Shoot, I went to the NFL. I could only speak one language in terms of the Nebraska offense, which was very, I say, rudimentary offense because it was all run. It was play action
Yeah.
mixed in, but mostly run, downhill run plays. Now I got to Seattle. I had to learn the number system. The play was 869. I'm like, where's the power? Where's the power side? Like, which way am I going? I'm looking at John Freeze and Warren Moon like, what is
What?
this telling me that? Like, where is it? Where's the strength of the play? So
Yeah.
I had to learn it the hard way. I got beat up. I made a lot of mistakes my rookie year in training camp, but that's once I got the system down, asking questions, go over the notes, watching film. So you got to
Right.
learn that stuff. Just know that before you jump in a portal, like, man, I gotta, either year 1 to 2 would be better if I stay here because I get mature. Prime example, Bo Nix. Before he jumped to the schools that he went to, I think he was there at least maybe I say at least 2 years every school. He started at Auburn, then he went to what was it? It was I think was it something before Oregon? Where was he at before Oregon? I can't remember, but I
I
know
yeah, I
I know he was Auburn first. He might have been there 3 to 4 years and then went to Oregon, and that's where he got drafted up. He probably only been to two schools.
yeah.
So that 4 years at Auburn was fantastic. I mean, you had a competitive school. You're in the SEC. You had great coaching there. He goes into the portal and and things got better. He goes to Lanning out in Oregon, and they got a powerhouse because they got Nike, got Phil Knight behind them. Let's just be real.
Loaded. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
just be real. But then you got good coaches out there, and then he learns kind of like how Sam Darnold bounced around the league after he got drafted first round. Another example, even though it's not the college level, but this could have this
Right.
players
Right.
that like Sam been around a lot of spots. He got first round to the Jets, then he goes to Carolina, then he goes to the 49ers. And then in the 49ers, that's where he said, man, Kyle Shanahan, and he's second
Hmm.
generation head coach from his dad Mike with the Denver Broncos, who are two back-to-back Super Bowl champions there.
Exactly. Yep.
Learning from Kyle, between him and the quarterback coach, who I think it was might have been Matt LaFleur's brother, I believe. And then boom, he's in the Minnesota where you got McDowell, who is a former quarterback. Back, even though he was a backup, he's a former NFL player like myself. So yeah,
Mhm.
he's learning from a guy who did it at the highest level. And he said, I just took all that information and just made, and paid attention to it and used
And
it.
now look at him.
And now he's a Super Bowl champ.
Absolutely.
He
Yeah.
he catches in with Minnesota, then he catches in, not only cash a contract in with Seattle, he also wins the Super Bowl.
They had the Super Bowl.
On top of
So,
that.
adding a lot of that into it is all of your everything that you just talked about, development and mindset.
Yes.
Those are two things that really stick out to me, what we just talked about. And one of kind of my last questions that I really have for you, Ahman, as we're kind of wrapping everything up. Currently I have a freshman. I have a freshman in high school. There are tons of freshmen that are out there.
Yeah.
What advice would you give a freshman that's kind of starting their journey now? And it doesn't matter what sport, but what advice would you give them as they're starting, getting ready off and getting ready to go?
My advice would be to one, be open, be an open mind to anything and everything, and learn how to take your punches. Take your dues. Because you're gonna pay some dues as a freshman at every level, high school, college, and then rookie year. It's in whatever sport you get to pick if you're able to make it to the professional level. But at least at the high school, college level, you want to learn. You want to be that sponge and soak up everything.
Soak it up, yeah.
And then be that ultimate team player. Be willing, because I remember my freshman year, they asked me if I wanted the red shirt. I said no. I said, Coach, it was Coach Solich. I said, Coach Solich, look, I don't have to play running back my freshman year. I already know Lawrence Phillips is the starter. I'll kick off return. I punt it in high school. I averaged 40.5 at Omaha Central. I would punt the ball. It was like, well, we got somebody there. I said, I'll be his backup. Or I'll play special team. I'll be I'll learn the R5, R1, all that's running down. I want to play my freshman year. So be open to that, because then they'll say you're just not a running back. You're a football player. And then they'll be like, oh, man, this kid wants to, he wants to, come in and help out. And I'm like, yeah, I want to help. I'm part of the team. So I want to do every special team stuff to offense. I'll go on defense if you need me to, So be that type of player. And obviously, hit your books. Be locked in on that from day one. Because high school freshmen, if you have a bad freshman year, the colleges will see that. And that will mark that against you. So just be wary.
It's really, you can do it, but it's hard once you start that first semester, second semester of your freshman year, and you start sliding in those grades, trying to catch back up.
It's tough.
Really it's tough.
Yep.
It's tough. Now, I lied because I said I had that was the last one.
That's
but
okay.
You got to remember, Ahman, if you could go back and remember your 17-year-old self.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is one piece of advice that you could give yourself now, right? That now that you didn't know back when it comes to whether it be sports, recruiting? What's some of that advice you would give your 17-year-old self?
Oh, that's easy. Ask more questions. Even though it seemed like I did ask, I would sometimes some questions I got intimidated out of because I felt that I was like disrespecting an adult, or somebody that seem above me. I was like, no, I'm not going to ask that question because they're the head coach, or they're the recruiter, or they're the adult in the room. Not. That might be just something from my generation. My mom and dad be like, hey, don't, speaking when spoken to, right? That type of stuff.
I heard that too.
As a kid, don't talk until somebody talk to you. Raise your hand. Like in class, I had Miss Burnley, second grade teacher. She said, I don't want to hear you talking unless you raise your hand. I'm like, So it's kind of in this. So that kind of stood with me. So now ask the questions. That's what I told him. That was the first thing I told my brother, my nephew Niles, that went to Nebraska, wide receiver, and they got drafted to the Redskins at the time. They were called the Redskins. Yeah. I told my brother, to every agent that comes talk to Niles, ask them every question until you're blue in the face, because they got to answer up, And the same thing with schools today, kids. They got NIL, they got transfer portal. Ask a million questions, so you know everything before you decide to jump or negotiate that contract with your parents. Ask 1,000 questions.
Take that back to earlier when you talked about coming up with those check marks. Check those boxes. because you're going to hear some answers, and then you're going to be able to take that information and process it, and be able to do with what you will.
Exactly.
That wraps up today's episode with Coach TD's Winning Playbook with Ahman Green. Thanks for being today's guest on the first episode that we're launching. That's coming out. We're going to get that started. I appreciate you very much, and really dropping insight from just not your background, but giving some information to maybe a 17-year-old that might be out there that's listening to this program. So we appreciate
100%.
you being on here today.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me, Tony.
Absolutely. Hey, don't forget, master the fundamentals, stay consistent, and also stay ready. Recruiting will take care of itself.